Do you think immigration changes who we are? I'm not talking about our job title, our address, not the language we speak. I mean who we are underneath all of that. Because before I immigrated, people warned me about a lot of things. The weather, the paperwork, the job search, the language, but nobody talked about the day that I would look at myself and think, wait, when did I become this person? Hi, I'm Lida and welcome back to Unfiltered with Lida. Today, I want to talk about something I wish someone had explained to me years ago. The identity crisis that can happen after immigration. Now, when I say identity crisis, I don't mean I forgot who I was. I still knew my name, of course. I still had the same family, the same memories, the same habit of overthinking everything. That definitely survived immigration, but little by little, I stopped feeling like the version of myself I knew. And one of the first clues was actually something funny. Back home, whenever someone found themselves in a ridiculously clumsy situation, we would joke that they were like Pat and Matt. If you've never heard of them, they're two cartoon characters who somehow managed to turn every simple task in a complete disaster. One day, not longer after arriving in Canada, somebody was struggling with something and I casually just said, oh, they're like Pat and Matt. And silence. Nothing. People just stared at me and suddenly I realized nobody knew who Pat and Matt were. What should have been a 2-second joke turned into a 5-minute explanation. And as we all know, the moment you have to explain a joke, it's over. Completely dead. I remember thinking, well, there goes my career in comedy. And honestly, that happened more often than I expected. Not only with jokes, with references, with expressions, with little things that had always been part of how I communicated. It felt like I wasn't only translating language, I was translating myself. Before moving to Canada, I was teaching in university. I was talkative, very talkative. If there was a discussion happening, chances are I had something to say. And if there wasn't a discussion happening, I could probably start one. I felt comfortable speaking in front of people. I knew my field, I knew my environment, I knew where I belonged. Then I immigrated. And suddenly things felt different. I remember sitting in meetings at work. I had ideas, good ideas, I think. At least in my head, they sounded pretty brilliant. But instead of jumping into the conversation, I would hesitate. I would ask myself, should I say this? Am I explaining it correctly? Will people understand me? And by the time I finished having that conversation with myself, the meeting had already moved on. Can anyone out there relate to that? Yeah, inside, you're still the same person, right? You still have the same thoughts, the same dreams, the same personality. But suddenly, the tools that you used to express yourself don't work quite the same way anymore. And after a while, you start wondering, why am I so quiet now? Why don't I feel as confident? Have I changed? For a long time, I thought immigration had changed me. Now I see it differently. I don't think that immigration changed who I was. I think it simply removed many of the mirrors that I was holding in front of myself. And when I talk about mirrors, I mean the mirror of speaking confidently and being understood. The mirror of knowing exactly where I belonged. The mirror of feeling competent. And when those mirrors disappear, something interesting happens. You start asking questions you've never had to ask before. Who am I when nobody knows my story? Where do I belong? Who am I beyond my job title? Who am I when the roles that define me no longer fit the same way? And honestly, as uncomfortable as that period was, I think it was one of the most important periods of my life. Because for the first time, I wasn't defining myself through what I did. I had to look at who I actually was. I was no longer Lida the teacher, not the daughter, not the wife, not even the mother. It was just Lida. And that's not always an easy question to answer. But maybe that's the hidden gift of immigration, where you can, instead of asking yourself who I was before, you could dare to ask, who do I want to become now? And if you're going through that phase right now, I want you to know that you're not alone. Feeling lost doesn't necessarily mean that you're lost. Sometimes it simply means you're in transition. Sometimes the old version of you no longer fits, and the new version is still under construction. It's messy, very messy, but it's also where growth happens. I want to leave you with a question before we finish, and I would love to hear your answers in the comments. Think about it for a moment. If everything external disappeared, your title, your status, your country, other people's expectations, what parts of you would still remain? Think about it. And if you've ever had your own pattern match moment after immigration or any other situation, tell me about it in the comments. I'd really love to hear that. And thank you so much for being here today. And I would love to see you next week. Thank you. Bye.